While there have been some MMA couples who have been bitten by the love bug, others have shunned away Cupid's efforts for controversial reasons. Today, we shall take a look at the latter and talk about the 5 most controversial UFC couples: Paige Vanzant and Austin Vanderford. When you hit a certain level of stardom, Googling yourself might help improving your identity at the airport, or at least that's what Paige Vanzant tried. Let's discuss who Paige and Austin are first. Vanzant is a former UFC fighter turned content creator and professional wrestler. Fans have showed interest in her love life for some time now. She used to date former bantamweight king Cody Garbrandt, but is now married to Bellator fighter Austin Vanderford. Austin, similar to Cody, is also a talented athlete sporting a rad neck tattoo. All of you that were in Paige's DMs without a neck piece, now you know why she didn't respond. Vanzant and Vanderford aren't too covert about what they do behind locked doors. As content creators, they actually make quite a bit of money from selling more adult content. In fact, Paige has claimed that she's more financially free now than she was fighting in the organizational powerhouse of MMA. With all of this context, we'll go back to the airport situation. Vanzant was flying to an AEW event, but there was some confusion on who she was due to a recent last name change. So, she showed the airport staff what happens when she looks up the name Paige Vanderford, only to see that the first headline to be read was about her and her husband's sex tape. One embarrassing flight later, Paige made it to her AEW event, where she more than likely asked them to send her future tickets under her married name. Travis Browne and Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey and Travis Browne are living happily ever after. They've been together since 2015, married in 2017, and added a baby to the mix in 2021. Things seem to be going great for the couple now, but this wasn't always the case. Former heavyweight fighter Browne has a bit of a rough history in terms of relationships. Domestic violence allegations made their way into headlines around 2016, a year after he and Rousey began dating. These allegations from his ex-wife, who he shares 2 children with, absolutely gutted the former heavyweight prospect. The UFC even put Browne on the shelf until they could vindicate HAPA of these allegations. During an interview to the media, Browne was very emotional in talking about the subject at hand. Regardless, fighters like Derek Lewis bring up these allegations. Rose Namajunas and Pat Barry. Enter one of the most lovable lethal fighters in UFC history, Pat Barry. Kidding, we're talking about Rose Namajunas. The two are indeed an item. If you ask Namajunas and Barry separately, they may have 2 different answers for when they began dating. Barry, when he was 29 and Rose was 22, said they were together for about 5 years, whereas Rose would say it's been 2 to 3 years. Regardless, that puts Namajunas close to, if not at the 17-year-old mark for the beginning of the relationship. Some have been talking about the red flags in the relationship, but it really came into the spotlight after UFC fighter Sean Strickland called Barry a groomer. Barry took to the MMA Hour and said that they don't sweat it in regards to these comments. According to both HD and Rose, it was inaccurate articles that have fogged up the relationship's timeline and that everything happened organically, legally, and happily. Aspen Ladd and Jim West. Sean Strickland may have diverted his attention towards Rose Namajunas and Pat Barry, some names with a bit more weight. But this Chris Hansen-esque side of him originally started at Aspen Ladd and her coach boyfriend, Jim West. Sean Strickland claimed that Aspen Ladd suffered from Stockholm Syndrome and that her feelings towards her boyfriend aren't genuine, but rather a coping mechanism towards an older coach taking advantage of a much younger student. There isn't solid evidence to back how old Ladd was when she met West, but the timelines make it seem it could be between 15 and 17 years old. Aspen Ladd is currently 27 years old, and, though his age is a little harder to find, it's believed that Jim West is 44 years old. JP Buys and Cheyenne Blissmas. From a debuting power couple to a rough divorce, we have JP Buys and Cheyenne Blissmas. The two entered the UFC together and competed at UFC on ESPN 21, where they both failed to leave with their hands raised. Just because they came into the UFC with a cool story doesn't mean all is well in the relationship. The two split around early 2022. Cheyenne went overseas to an undisclosed location and urged JP to sign divorce papers and stop taking her money. JP Buys doesn't like that he's being harassed by the public for what they see as him forcing Cheyenne to hide, when he thinks he's done nothing wrong. Blissmas seems to just want the divorce finalized so she can move on with her life.